Hello there and welcome to today's video. A few months ago I made a video on the complete lack of services out there for autistic adults, and in that video I also did a bit of a critique on the National Autistic Society website, and spoiler alert, it wasn't good. So in this video I thought I'd go through your comments on that particular video because it's now Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month, so I thought it was really relevant to hear your thoughts and experiences of support services out there or lack thereof. And because of the length of some of the comments, I'm going to read them directly from my desktop computer, so there might be a slight difference in noise quality, but I'll do my best in editing to cover that up. So let's go get started. I was diagnosed last month as a 52-year-old with autism. All I was given was a Word document with pretty much a link to the website discussed above, and had the same problems. There is nothing useful there. I had the same navigational problems, and on top of the shock of diagnosis, this lack of where to find help has just added to my despair. Well, I think this just speaks volumes really, doesn't it, about the absolute lack of services out there, and I don't doubt many autistic people can relate to this comment. I know that, certainly I can. I just felt that I was given this massive piece of information, but as to what to do with it, you have to just figure it out for yourself, which is incredibly frustrating. And certainly for me, it's one of the reasons why I set up this channel, just to be able to get all of this stuff off my chest, really, and to find and communicate with other autistic people. But yeah, it's just a kind of sorry state of affairs, certainly at the moment, isn't it? And gosh, I don't know what the future looks like in terms of support either. It's, yeah, not looking good, is it? I'm still really confused about the National Autistic Society websites because it is so dreadful, and it's heartening to know that it's not just me that has an issue with the navigational aspect of this website, and it does have outdated information on there as well. So it's something that they clearly need to address because it's just not working. It's just not a usable and useful tool for autistic people. And yeah, I think they need to be addressing this soon. Here in the US, it's bleak for autistic adults, and more specifically women with ASD, because we tend to mask so well. My last therapist sort of begrudgingly agreed that I'm autistic, but because she was caring for an adult son with autism who lived with her, she didn't seem to take my autism very seriously. She said, for example, "You are more fortunate than most. I'd be so happy and proud if my son could live on his own as you do." It became very uncomfortable and frustrating, so I stopped working with her. And on a different but similar note, today, a work colleague shared with me how much I remind him of Daria. Can it be any more clear that I'm autistic? Well, firstly, I'm really glad to hear that this person is now your ex-therapist, because gosh, I can't even imagine how I'd feel being in that scenario where my therapist was being so dismissive over the fact that I'm autistic. And surely it's therapists that should be kind of up to date with all of this information and knowledge. It's just so depressing to think that therapists are stuck in the past, because what hope does this give for the public at large to be more aware of what autism is and how it presents differently in different autistic people? Just really sorry that you had to go through this, and I've had many comments on my channel that have been very similar to this, and I've included the Daria comment because my ex-flatmate used to say that I reminded her of Daria so much, so that's why it's included. Relevant anecdotes. A provincial autistic advocacy organisation announced a job opening. I contacted them to signal my interest, but requested a conversation rather than submit a resume because I was in burnout and simply unable to jump through bureaucratic hoops. My message was ignored. It doesn't take a lot of effort to improvise and accommodate in such circumstances, but when workers are conditioned to hierarchy, they learn not to think independently, not to act because it's not their department. I don't know. I think because we're talking about an autism advocacy group here, you'd think they'd have a better understanding of how to communicate with autistic people, and the very fact that this person's message was ignored for me is really upsetting. And I don't doubt this person felt really frustrated as a result, but it really demonstrates the difficulties that autistic people have when looking for work or being in work, because it can be just so challenging for us to jump through these bureaucratic hoops, and the system just fails us in so many ways. I just felt really, yeah, frustrated reading this message. And also, if this is an autism advocacy group that we're talking about here and how they've handled the situation so badly, how does this fare for the workplace at large out there? It's just not a very hopeful message at all. I'm a self-realised ADHDer who, at almost 48, had the money to pay for a private assessment in British Columbia due to my mother passing very recently, yet despite multiple attempts to contact the few who do adult assessments here, I didn't hear back. There is zero access through the public healthcare system for adults to get assessed. There's a saying I've heard here that teeth are luxury bones, since dentistry is not covered in the public care system. I've started putting out a similar idea. Mental health care is luxury healthcare, since the public healthcare system is piss poor for mental health in general. Yep, I think many of us will relate to this, and certainly the mental health care system in the UK is pretty piss poor as well. However, I should add that here in England, you can get a free autism and ADHD assessment through Right to Choose. Just need to contact your GP about that. So it's something that I've been hugely grateful for, because I would never have been able to afford a diagnosis otherwise. And they go on to say, the reason why I want to get an autism assessment is due to my chronic health resulting in me applying for disability. An autism assessment would help ensure that my disability application is approved. I have a degree in computer science and a decade of experience in the workforce, but my brain fog and severe lethargy has made it impossible to not only do that work, but pretty much any steady work. I worked at a retail shoe store, and even 8 months of part-time work there caused my body and brain to shut down. I would love to be able to use my limited ability to contribute, but have no idea how, and have yet to find any resources that would help me figure things out. I can relate a lot to this comments because I can't work either through chronic illness, and I can't actually apply for PIP here in the UK, which is our disability benefit, because it is absolutely really difficult a process to go through, and our government is making it even harder for people who should be entitled to disability benefit to actually receive it. So yeah, it's just really disgusting what's going on. So I'm really sorry to hear that this person's in a similar situation, and I hope since posting their comment they've been able to access some financial aid. I am currently dealing with my 2 young adult kids on the spectrum and the lack of support existing for them, never mind my own struggles. In America, it's essentially once you turn 18 and out of school, you are forgotten, unless, that is, you are seen as significant enough a case to warrant the programs that are out there in certain pockets, all of which are at quite a cost in my location, other than what I call the bargain basement care, a thing which is full of misunderstandings, high turnover rates on staff, and really does precious little to constructively assist in anything valuable. Well, I think this person just sums it up so well. There's not a lot really I can add to it. I think there's almost an expectation in adults, autistic people who are late diagnosed, to just carry on as normal. You've lived your whole life this way, so why do you feel like you need help. It just makes us feel like a burden in a way, or that's certainly how I feel about it. But the very fact is that we do need this support, but we're just not getting it. The whole situation is very demoralising. I used to go to the local branch of the National Autistic Society's group meetings, but the main focus was always on parents or carers of autistic people. So there wasn't really much point in me going, and I never felt very comfortable sat in a circle of people. Where are you supposed to look? I stopped going, and I don't think it's even going anymore anyway. Where do I start with this one? To be asked to go and sit in a circle with other people to discuss, really private stuff essentially, about your autistic experience, and the other people there aren't even autistic anyway. I just despair sometimes that these were ever thought to be a good idea by anybody, because there is a fundamental lack of awareness about the autistic experience there by whoever set this group up, because who would feel comfortable with that? I know for damn sure I would not feel comfortable at all, and I wouldn't be going either. Just makes no sense to me at all. I was diagnosed autistic at 38, and as it was a struggle to get the diagnosis, my mum paid for me to be diagnosed privately. My NHS psychiatrist told me autism was a stigma I didn't want nor need, and knowing would not help me. My diagnosis changed my life completely and helped family relationships. It's so important to know why we never fit in, and why we may have suffered abuse for being different or being seen as rude, because I'm socially very awkward. As far as charities and advice, Coventry is very lacking, and I know teachers who say the training on autism is virtually non existent. Well, for me, this really demonstrates how important autism diagnoses are. It really does help an individual to make so much sense of their life, and they need this information. And to think that, another healthcare professional has said that it's a stigma and you don't want to have this label of being autistic, they just don't understand what it is or how important it is for autistic people to know this about themselves. And it's really, really anger inducing. And also, it just seems ridiculous that teachers aren't being given any training on autism and what it is and how it presents in different children, because they may well be the first person who could identify autism in a child that they're teaching. It just makes for a missed opportunity time and time again, because we know that early diagnoses can be just so beneficial for autistic children, and to have that opportunity stolen away essentially is, oh my god, it's so incredibly frustrating. And I'd like to see national charities doing far more in respect of teacher training. And I don't doubt it does go on at some level, but if this is what we're being told as anecdotal stories, that there is an issue. Teachers need this training and they should be given it. I have found most autism or ADHD websites to be so confusing. I gave up as it was causing me stress, it was just too hard. And I agree, it's shocking how few neurodivergent people are actually involved in running these things too. I think it's possibly done with the best intentions, but because action is being taken from the outside, as it were, things often don't work. For example, I was going to join a local group run by a charity, but the information on directions, parking, which door to go in, etc. were lacking. I had to call for information on what we would be doing, and I was told it was a small group of 15 to 20, and we would sit in a circle and chat for 2 hours. I can't think of anything more horrifying. No one running the group was neurodivergent. Needless to say, I did not go. What is this thing with sitting in circles? I don't understand. This is really inappropriate for autistic people, and you've only got to talk to autistic people to understand that this is not something that very many of us would feel comfortable in doing. And, I would not feel comfortable in that scenario at all. And the very fact that the leaders weren't autistic or neurodivergent really speaks volumes for me. I just feel that we need far more representation in autistic charities, autistic advocacy groups, because we're just not being heard at all. I was pleasantly surprised this week to find a free Australian autism web chat and hotline. I began talking with somebody and they were very understanding and eager to help. I was not expecting this, as in Australia, everything has a price tag here usually. Well, this is surprising news that there is such a thing as a free service out there that is good in terms of quality. And the person leaving the comment didn't actually mention the name of the organisation, but I've done a quick Google and I think it's this one. So it's Autism Connects by Amaze, creating an autism inclusive Australia. And there's a little more information about them here. And I'll leave details about them down in a video description. I need support as my dad, who was the last of my family, passed away a few years ago. I lived with him and depended on him. I've tried all resources to help my needs be met, and the support just is not there. And there is so much for autistic children, but not adults. I tried to go to Autism Speaks, and I just got the runarounds. Never got an answer, and all leads led to nowhere. I have been thrown to live alone and struggle every day. One service that said they can help with some of my needs said that they are out of funds. I am on their list, and I've been on their list for 2 years and call every other month, and it's the same, no funds, and I'm on the list. I live in the US and it's not good for us adults. I'm just so sorry to hear this. You can hear the desperation in this person's comments, and I'm sure this story is repeated time and time again. And because this comment was left a few months ago now, I really hope that they're in a better position at the moment. There was a response to this comment actually that I'll just read through now because I think it might be helpful for some people in America. Try looking for CCS services in your area or states. I get all of my services via a CCS group or company. There are several different programs here in Wisconsin, and I'm sure they are in other states too. But through it, I get a care coordinator, and that person hooks you up with the services that you need, and it's free. They are not specifically an autism group, but they certainly know about autism. Through them, I get a talk therapist every week. I get horse therapy every week, peer supports, a yoga teacher, a housing specialist who helps me with housing issues and takes me to the supermarkets. In the past, I had a nutritionist too. There are other things as well through CCS, it depends on the person. It's all free, but you have to be on a low income and have a mental health diagnosis, and that can include autism or PTSD or general anxiety. So try to find an agency that offers CCS, and in case you live in Wisconsin, 2 of them here are Wisconsin Community Services and Professional Services Group. So a big thank you to the person who responded to the original comments. And for me, it just really evidences how brilliant our community is, because I see evidence time and time again in my comments of people really trying to help each other, because essentially we all know what it's like. When I moved house, I started with Autism Understanding Scotland. They were great autism-led Zoom meetings and had a wealth of information. I then had ulcerative colitis and was off the radar for about 8 months. When things got a bit better, I was ready to re-engage, only to discover that their funding had been cut, and I was informed that they were child autism based. Now stuck with nothing available. This is incredibly frustrating, and for me it really demonstrates the issues with the charitable sector. I've worked in various charities and have worked on funding applications in the past, and they're just so difficult because you're vying with any number of other charities for the same pots of money, and the grant providers seem really focused on new projects all the time. And this is incredibly frustrating when you're trying to keep your original service or services going. It's really difficult to get that continuation of funding. So you're always looking out for kind of new projects. But of course, this is what happens as a direct consequence of this kind of stuff going on. You know, you lose really important services, and yeah, for me, it feels like the whole charitable sector funding system needs a real shake-up. So this comment is about the National Autistic Society website, which I looked at in the previous video. The helpline used to be helpful years ago. It hasn't existed for many years now. A lot of info is out of date. You ring a contact number and you're told to go to a website. Not good if you have dyslexia, are visually impaired, have just had 2 strokes in your eyes. Website is very confusing, I agree, waste of money. Well, this to me looks like another consequence of losing funding. I didn't realise they had a helpline set up however long ago, and what a service to lose. You know, you can absolutely see how important this would have been for autistic people, and yeah, to think that's been taken away, no doubt by lack of funding, is incredibly frustrating. Throughout the early noughties, there were multiple campaigns covering all of these issues, finally culminating in an all-out push to get the Autism Act through Parliament. Although the Act was passed in 2009, and the autism strategy, A Fulfilling and Rewarding Life, has been in effect since 2010, I have seen little to no evidence of life improving for the majority of the autistic population. It seems that the Act has been blatantly ignored or conveniently forgotten about as budgets and resources have been squeezed tighter and tighter. I was diagnosed in 2003 at the age of 44 and was one of the many people that fought to have the Act passed. I am now fast approaching 66. Over years, I have come to the realisation that it is impossible for your average person on the street to begin to conceptualise what autism is. I say this as someone who used to lecture under and postgraduates in the field of autism. It is a hard struggle for charities, but the onus has to be placed squarely on the statutory services, regardless of funding constrictions. There has never been funding for us, and start creating environments where we can thrive and not just survive the day. Unfortunately, I'm still waiting. Gosh, there's just so much interesting stuff in this comment, and thank you so much to the person who left this, because it's so interesting to see and hear how the Act came to be. And the Act is England specific, and in all honesty, I'm really keen to do a video on this at some point, because it's really clear that despite this Act, we're still being really let down. And I'd agree actually on statutory services. They're the ones that should be providing this kind of support for autistic people and not charities. And it's incredibly frustrating that we're now in this kind of position, really. And it's not only autism, it's other charitable causes as well. It should really be are statutory services that provide care, but in very many instances, this just isn't the case. So a huge thank you to everybody who left comments on my original video, and I'm just really sorry I wasn't able to include them all today, but I think I'll probably do another video on a similar theme at some point, because it's really important, isn't it, a topic to discuss. So by all means, feel free to leave your thoughts and opinions and experiences below, because as I say, it's something that we need far more dialogue on, because we're just not getting the support that we need and the support that we deserve. So thank you for watching. Give it a like if you got this far, and I'll see you again soon.